My name is Xavier, but to my family, I've always been Bobo. I'm 76 years old, and on what should have been the crowning moment of my legacy, watching my only granddaughter graduate from the most prestigious university in the country, my entire world was dismantled with a single sentence. She hugged me on that stage, her gown brushing my worn-out suit. The cameras flashed, and in that perfect public moment, she leaned in and whispered something just for me. Something that turned a lifetime of love into ash. In a heartbeat, I went from her beloved grandfather to a ghost. Today, I'm going to tell you the full story. How the quiet man who poured his heart and his savings into her future became the one to carefully, irrevocably, dismantle it. I'll tell you about the 12 years, the small fortune, and the hidden clause nobody thought to read. But first, let me know in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? To this incredible community that stands against disrespect and entitlement. Thank you. Your support is the compass that guided me through my darkest hour. If you're new here, welcome. Do me a favor, like, subscribe, and hit that bell. You're not just following a story. You're joining an alliance that believes in accountability, and that some lessons, no matter how painful, must be delivered. So, grab a cup of coffee, get comfortable, and let me tell you how a philanthropist's signature on an old donation form became the key that locked a golden future away forever. Now, let me tell you my story. For 12 years, my primary purpose in life was to fund my granddaughter Zoe's education at Somerset Academy, the most prestigious private school in the state. It cost me $180,000. It cost me everything else, too. I want to be clear about the money from the start, so you don't think I'm some distant tycoon. I was a civil engineer. I built bridges, solid, functional, load-bearing things meant to connect 2 points and last for generations. My wife, Elena, was a teacher. Our combined life was one of careful budgets, proud practicality, and the quiet belief that education was the ultimate infrastructure for a human soul. We saved. We planned. The lake house was our retirement dream. When Elena got sick, the dreams narrowed to treatments, then to comfort, then to memories. After she was gone, the silence in our home was a physical weight. My daughter, Christine, and Zoe, who was 10, were adrift in their own grief. Christine was struggling. A single mother after that fool Jordan decided fatherhood was a hobby he could quit. One evening, Christine sat at my kitchen table, the one where Elena used to grade papers, and she cried. Not the gentle tears of memory, but the ragged, desperate sobs of a woman who saw no good path forward. "I can't give her what she needs, Bobo," she said. "The school's in my district. It's a lottery. She's so bright. She'll get lost." I looked at Zoe then, curled on my sofa, looking at a picture book of the cosmos Elena had given her. She pointed at a nebula. "It looks like Grandma's watercolors," she whispered. That was the moment, the pivot upon which my remaining life turned. I sold the lake house. The realtor's sign going into the lawn felt like driving a stake through my own heart. Elena had picked the curtains for the windows, but when I handed Christine the check for Somerset's first year, the relief on her face was a sun rising. "You're her hero, Dad," she said. Zoe hugged my legs. "Thank you, Grandpa Bobo. I'm going to learn about stars for real." I became a bridge. That's how I framed it for myself. I was the span between their grief and a future of stability, of excellence. The money was just the steel and concrete. My love was the blueprint. The payments became my rhythm. Every semester, a check. For years, it was accompanied by crayoned thank you notes from Zoe, taped to my refrigerator. Then emailed ones, brief and cheerful. Then just a text from Christine. Tuition invoice came. Thanks, Dad. The notes stopped. The gratitude became assumed, a silent tax on my existence. I told myself it was fine. This wasn't about gratitude, it was about the result. I'd visit for birthdays, and Zoe would perform for me, reciting French verbs, explaining the political subtext in some novel. It was impressive, It was also a recitation. I'd ask her, "But what do you think?" She'd blink, then give me the sanctioned analysis from her teacher. The little girl who saw watercolors in the stars was receding, replaced by a polished, pleasant simulacrum. I missed her, but I was proud of the student she'd become. I had to be. What else were the years in the lake house for? The loneliness of funding a life you're no longer part of is a quiet, specific thing. My world shrank to the dimensions of my tidy house. Christine's life was a whirlwind of Zoe's tournaments, galas, and networking opportunities. I didn't understand. My calls often went to voicemail. My visits were scheduled like board meetings. I told myself this was the natural order. A seedling needs the greenhouse, not the old tree-casting shade. But the cracks in the facade began to show in the details, the small betrayals of language. It was during Zoe's junior year. She was visiting, ostensibly to work on a history paper. She spent most of the time texting, her thumbs a furious blur. I brought her a glass of lemonade, the way she used to like it. "So, this paper," I said, easing into my chair. "What's the angle?" She didn't look up. The socio-economic determinants of political disenfranchisement in post-colonial municipalities. The sentence was so heavy, so airless, it thudded between us. It was jargon, a wall of words. "Sounds complex," I said, trying. "Which municipality? Got a case study?" She finally glanced at me, a flicker of impatience in her eyes. "It's a theoretical framework, Grandpa. The case studies are just illustrative." She said illustrative like it was a childish concept. "Right," I said. I pointed to the old globe in the corner, the one she used to spin, her finger searching for exotic places. "Just seems like real people, in a real place, might be the point." She sighed, a soft, exasperated sound that made me feel ancient. "The point is the thesis, the argument. That's what they care about." They, the mysterious, powerful they at Somerset, the gatekeepers. Later, I overheard her on the phone in the kitchen, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. "No, I told him it's fine. Yeah, Jordan said he'd tighten the methodology section. It's fine. He doesn't get it." Jordan. A name that hadn't been introduced to me. A tutor Christine had mentioned once, waving a hand. "Everyone at Somerset has one, Dad. It's standard." But the tone in Zoe's voice wasn't about getting help. It was about outsourcing. It was the tone you use when you found a workaround. A chill went through me, the first true cold of doubt. I thought of my bridges. You couldn't outsource the load-bearing calculations. If you did, the bridge would fall, and people would die. What died here, I wondered, if the work wasn't hers? I said nothing. To question it was to question the entire expensive, glittering enterprise. It was to admit that the bridge I'd built might be leading to a cliff. By her senior year, Zoe was a stranger who carried my DNA. Her achievements were listed in a glossy newsletter Christine forwarded to me. Debating team captain, model UN chair, and the crown jewel, her senior independent project in astrophysics, luminosity variations in dwarf galaxies, a new interpretive model. She'd won the Somerset Merit Prize for it. A photograph accompanied the announcement. Zoe, looking confidently at the camera, a graph on a screen behind her. Astrophysics. My throat tightened looking at it. Elena's picture book. The watercolor nebula. It felt like a ghost had reached out and tapped me on the shoulder. When I called to congratulate her, Christine answered, breathless with pride. "Can you believe it, Bobo? The head of the department says it's publishable. We're so proud." "That's incredible," I managed. "I'd love to hear about it from her. What sparked the idea?" A pause. A rustling. Then Zoe's voice, smooth as glass. "Hi, Grandpa. Thanks. It's really technical. I'd bore you." "Try me," I said, a slight edge in my voice. "I built things for a living. I like technical." She launched into a summary. It was a flood of terms. redshift, metallicity, luminosity functions. But it was a recitation, a playback. There was no joy in it, no curiosity, no sense of the awe that makes a person stare at the night sky in the first place. So, I interrupted gently, the new interpretive model. What makes it yours? What did you see in the data that others didn't? The silence on the line was different this time. It wasn't impatient. It was hollow, panicked. It's about applying a multi-parameter analysis to existing data sets, she said. The words rushed. Look, Grandpa, I have to go. A college advisor call. Love you. The click was final. I sat holding the dead phone. I saw it then, with a clarity that was like a shard of ice in my chest. She didn't know. She might have assembled it. She might have presented it. But the spark, the insight, the heart of the thing, was not hers. Someone named Jordan had provided the architecture. She was just living in it. The graduation invitation arrived the next week, thick cardstock, embossed. It was the culmination of my life's work, my love, my sacrifice, and I realized with a dread that sat heavy in my stomach that I was deeply, terribly afraid of it. I was going to go. I would wear my best suit, the one Elena said made me look distinguished. I would smile. But I was no longer a proud architect heading to a ribbon cutting. I was an inspector, walking onto a beautiful, expensive bridge, listening for the sound of cracks. The day of the graduation dawned obscenely bright. The sun felt like a spotlight. I stood before my closet, my hands shaking as I knotted my tie, the navy silk one Elena had bought me for Christine's wedding. 4 big days, she'd said, fixing it with a smile. I hadn't worn it since the funeral. The fabric felt like an accusation. Somerset Academy looked like a movie set, all manicured lawns and ancient ivy-strangled brick. The air hummed with a privileged excitement, the sound of expensive cameras and effortless futures. I felt like a ghost haunting a palace, my worn dress shoes sinking into the perfect grass. I found Christine in the throng. She was radiant, vibrating with a triumph she wore like a diamond necklace. She kissed my cheek, her perfume a cloud of something floral and unfamiliar. Can you believe it, Bobo? We did it. We. The word stung. I just nodded. Then I saw her. Zoe. The gown, black and flowing, made her look both ancient and brand new. The mortarboard was perched on her perfectly curled hair. She was surrounded by a flock of similar brilliant birds, laughing, taking selfies. She saw us. Her smile clicked into place, a flawless, practiced thing. She floated over. Grandpa, you made it. She offered her cheek for a kiss. I leaned in. Her skin was cool, her perfume even stronger than her mother's, a sweet, cloying scent that made my eyes water. Wouldn't miss it, I said, my voice gravel in my throat. The ceremony was a long, sonorous drone of Latin phrases and lofty exhortations. When they called her name for the Somerset Merit Prize, a special award for her astrophysics project, Christine gripped my arm, her nails biting into my flesh. "That's our girl," she whispered, her voice thick. I watched Zoe ascend the stage again, shake the dean's hand, accept the embossed leather portfolio. She turned to the crowd, that smile beaming out, searching. It swept over our section, over me, and landed on her friends. She gave them a tiny, conspiratorial wink. The weight in my stomach turned to stone. After the final toss of the caps, the green became a chaos of hugs and photos. "Over here! Family photo!" Christine cried, herding us toward a professional photographer. We arranged ourselves, Christine and Zoe at the center, beaming, me on the end, feeling like a stump in a flower bed. "Okay, Grandpa, get in close," the photographer urged. I stepped toward Zoe. She opened her arm, the heavy gown sleeve swallowing me as she pulled me into a side hug. The camera flashed once, twice. She turned her head, her lips an inch from my ear. The smile was still painted on for the cameras, but her voice, when it came, was low. Liquid nitrogen poured directly into my soul. "Thanks for the check, Grandpa. Now you can go." A soft, rehearsed laugh for the camera. Then the dagger, precise and cold. "You're just the checkbook. You're embarrassing." A final pause, a single word expelled with pure, distilled contempt. "Trash." She released me, pivoted back to her mother, her laughter ringing high and clear. "Another one, Mom, over by the oak tree." I stood frozen. The world did not go dark. It became unbearably, hyper-vibrantly sharp. I could see the individual threads in the gown of the woman next to me. I could hear the separate strands of 100 conversations. I could feel every one of my 76 years in the ache of my knees, the thud of my heart. The smile on my face, Elena's smile, Christine's smile, the family smile, did not fall. It fossilized. It became a rigid, calcium mask. I patted Zoe's back where my hand still rested, a grandfatherly gesture. Then I turned and walked away. I drove home through a tunnel of silence. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I simply ceased to be. The man known as Bobo had been declared obsolete, a piece of refuse, and in that moment he was. What was left was something older, harder, and utterly empty. Listen, the algorithm buries small channels. If this story stops with you, it dies here. But if you hit subscribe in the next 5 seconds, you're not just following a story, you're fueling a mission. You're telling the platform that real, human stories about dignity matter more than flashy nonsense. Be the fuel. Subscribe now. Let's get to 1K together and make sure this message is heard. Now, let's get back to what I did next. For 3 days, I was a ghost in my own house. I moved from chair to kitchen to bed, a sleepwalker. The word echoed in the silence. Trash, trash, trash. On the 4th morning, I woke with a clarity so sharp it was painful. The grief had burned away, leaving behind a cold, flat plane of truth. I was not hurt. I was informed. Her whisper wasn't a betrayal. It was a diagnosis. It was the final, ugly data point that made sense of all the other anomalies. I went to my small home office, a room of filing cabinets and practicality. I began to pull records, not with frenzy, but with the methodical precision of a forensic engineer assessing a collapse. I started a timeline on a large sheet of drafting paper, my old tools for a new investigation. Bank statements, 12 years of them, with the quarterly withdrawals to Somerset highlighted. Emails from Christine, tracking the evolution of her requests from gratitude to expectation. Text message logs with Zoe, growing shorter, more perfunctory. Then I began the digital dig. I searched her name, Somerset, Astrophysics. I found a society page photo from a year ago. Somerset Junior Science Gala. Zoe in a cocktail dress, standing with a young man in a lab coat. The caption, with Jordan Ellis, graduate tutor and research assistant. Jordan. The name from the kitchen whisper. I searched him. A PhD candidate in astrophysics at the university. His published research abstract bore a chillingly familiar thematic structure. I opened the PDF of the Somerset newsletter, the one with her award-winning project summary. I read it line by line. Then I found Jordan Ellis's doctoral thesis proposal online. The methodology section was different in scale, but not in fundamental architecture. The terminology, the specific analytical frameworks, they were mirrors. My hands didn't shake. My breath was even. This was no longer about my heart. It was about a load-bearing beam that was hollow. It was about a fraudulent structure built with my money. I remembered the clause. In the haze of grief after Elena died, when I'd set up the structured endowment to cover the later years, the Somerset Development Officer had been all smooth assurances. Standard language, Mr. Xavier. But I was an engineer. I read specs. I had insisted on adding a line, a simple sentence. Funds are contingent upon the maintenance of academic integrity as solely determined by the donor, with the right to an independent audit upon suspicion of breach. The officer had chuckled. "We don't foresee any issues, of course, but we're happy to accommodate." It was a line in a 100-page document. A sleeping dog no one thought would ever wake. It was time to feed the dog. I did not act in anger. Anger is hot and messy. This was cold and clean. I spent a week preparing. I compiled my evidence into a simple bulleted dossier: the financial timeline, the textual decline, the link between Jordan Ellis and Zoe, the parallel language between his work and her project summary. I presented it not as the ravings of a hurt old man, but as the concerning observations of a principal donor. I rehearsed the call. I wrote down my objectives. I was not seeking an apology. I was not seeking her humiliation. I was seeking a verification of integrity. If I was wrong, the audit would prove it, and I would apologize, and the bridge, though cracked, might still stand. If I was right, then the bridge was built on sand, and it needed to be condemned before someone trusted their life to it. On a Tuesday morning at 9:05 a.m., I called the main number for Somerset Academy. I asked for the Office of Institutional Advancement. I was transferred. I gave my name. "Xavier, I'm a founding member of the Horizon Circle Endowment. I need to speak with the head of the office, please." A moment later, a man's voice, polished and warm, came on the line. "Mr. Xavier, this is Dean Robert Alden. How can I help one of our most loyal benefactors today?" I looked at Elena's photograph on my desk. For big days. "Dean Alden," I said, my voice steady, devoid of emotion. "Thank you for your time. I'm calling regarding the Xavier Family Merit Endowment, specifically the disbursement tied to my granddaughter Zoe's final year and merit prize." "Of course, a bright spot for us. Zoe's project was spectacular." "That is precisely what I wish to discuss," I said, cutting through the pleasantry. "I have reason to believe the academic integrity underpinning that project, and therefore the merit award funded by my endowment, may be compromised. I am invoking Clause 7B of the Endowment Agreement, which grants me the right to request a formal independent academic audit of the work in question." The silence on the other end was profound. I could almost hear the calculations clicking behind his eyes. Scandal, reputation, money. "Mr. Xavier, that is a very serious allegation. These processes, they're for the most extreme circumstances. Perhaps we could discuss your concerns informally, over lunch." "My concern," I said, each word a measured brick, "is that Somerset Academy awarded its highest merit prize to work that may not be the product of the student's own original thought. My concern is that my family's name and funds are attached to that prize. The agreement is clear. I am not requesting a discussion. I am formally requesting the audit. Today. Or my next call will be to my lawyer to discuss full revocation of the endowment and a public statement on my reasons why." Another silence, colder now. The warmth was gone from his voice. "I see. We, of course, take our donors' wishes and our integrity with the utmost seriousness. We will need to review the stipulated clause and begin the process with our Academic Standards Board. You understand, this could have significant consequences for the student." "I do," I said. "I am counting on it." I hung up. The room was quiet. I expected to feel a surge of something. Vengeful thrill, grim satisfaction. I felt nothing. Just a vast, echoing hollow. I had just launched a missile at my own life's work. All I could do now was wait for the impact. The waiting was an exquisite torture. It was the silence after the trigger pull, waiting to see if the gun would fire. I avoided Christine's calls. Let her live in her blissful, triumphant world a few days longer. I went through the motions of life, grocery shopping, watching the news, watering Elena's ferns. I was a shell. My mind replayed the tape, the whisper, the wink on stage, the hollow explanation of her project, the name, Jordan, the parallel texts. Was I a monster? Was I destroying a young woman's life because my feelings were hurt? No. The voice that answered was not my own. It was the ghost of my professional conscience. You do not let a flawed bridge stand. You condemn it. You tear it down. You build something true, or you build nothing at all. 5 days after my call, my personal email dinged. The sender was Somerset Academy Academic Standards Board. The subject line, Formal Inquiry Notification. My hand hovered over the mouse. This was it, the official beginning of the end. I opened it. It was a dry, legalistic document. It stated that a review had been initiated regarding the awarded Senior Independent Project of student Zoe. Last name. It named the specific concerns raised regarding originality and authorship. It outlined the process. The project would be examined by an external panel of experts in astrophysics from a neighboring university. The student and her faculty advisor would be interviewed. The tutor, one Jordan Ellis, would also be contacted. All findings would be confidential until a determination was made. Attached was a countersigned copy of Clause 7b. They were doing it. They were really doing it. A strange calm settled over me. The dread lifted. The path was set. There was no more ambiguity. I was no longer the passive grandfather, the silent checkbook. I was a force of consequence. It was terrible. It was necessary. That night, I dreamt of bridges. Not the majestic spans I'd helped design, but a beautiful, intricate footbridge made of crystal and gold. It glittered in the sun. People were walking across it, laughing. But with each step, I could see hairline fractures spreading from their feet like spiderwebs. I tried to shout a warning, but no sound came out. I could only watch as the cracks multiplied, a silent, spreading web of ruin, waiting for the one step that would make it all shatter. For 2 weeks, I lived in a state of suspended animation. The silence from Somerset was absolute. The silence from my daughter's family, a void I had carved out myself. I found myself talking to Elena, not at a graveside, but in the kitchen, where her absence was a constant, quiet companion. "I've started it, Ellie," I'd say, scrubbing a plate. "There's no turning back now." I imagined her leaning against the counter, arms crossed, not judging, just listening the way she always had. You never could abide a shortcut, Xavier. Not in your work, not in a soul. I almost called Christine a dozen times, to warn her, to stop it, but each time I heard the whisper. Trash. It wasn't just an insult. It was a verdict on a lifetime of love, reduced to a financial transaction. If that's all it ever was, then this audit was merely the final invoice. The call, when it came, was not from the Standards Board. It was from Dean Alden. His voice had lost all its polished warmth. It was thin, strained, the voice of a man delivering bad news he wanted far away from. "Mr. Xavier, the independent panel has concluded its review. Their findings are unequivocal." I said nothing. Let him carry the weight of the words. The project demonstrates a profound reliance on the unpublished frameworks and original analysis of the tutor, Jordan Ellis. Whole sections of the methodological design, key interpretive leaps, they are directly attributable to his doctoral work. The student's contributions, while presented with sophistication, are decorative. The panel's term was structural dependency. The work cannot be considered her own. The clinical language hung in the air. Structural dependency. A bridge built on someone else's pilings. The consequences, I asked, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. A long sigh. The Somerset Merit Prize is revoked. The final grade for the project is nullified. As the project was a core graduation requirement, and given the severity of the breach, the Academic Standards Board has voted to rescind the diploma. Rescind the diploma. The words were concrete blocks, dropping into place. "There will be no public announcement," Alden continued quickly. "Discretion is in everyone's interest. The record will be amended. She will be considered to have withdrawn prior to graduation. Of course, the university offers she received have already been informed." I closed my eyes. I saw the glossy invitations, the proud newsletters, the embossed portfolio in her hand on that stage, all of it unmade, with a few sentences in a report. "And the endowment?" I asked. "The terms have been satisfied. Your request has been fulfilled. We trust this concludes the matter." "It does," I said. "Thank you for your thoroughness." I hung up. I walked to the living room and sat in my chair. The late afternoon sun slanted through the blinds, cutting the room into bars of light and shadow. I had done it. I had pulled the flawed structure down. There was no victory in it, only a vast and hollow quiet, the silence after a demolition. All that was left was dust and the long, slow settling of it. The storm hit within the hour. My phone lit up, vibrating across the coffee table like a trapped insect. "Christine." I let it ring. It stopped, then immediately started again. And again. On the fifth call, I picked up. I didn't even have time to say hello. Her voice was a raw, shattered thing screaming through the speaker. "What did you do? What in God's name did you do?" I held the phone a few inches from my ear. I could hear Zoe wailing in the background, a high, animal sound of pure despair. They took it. They took everything. Her diploma, her prize, her place at Stanford. They all called. They all rescinded the offers. They said plagiarism. They said fraud. "Yes," I said, my voice calm in the eye of her hurricane. My calmness seemed to ignite her further. "How? How could this happen? She worked so hard. This is a mistake, a terrible, malicious mistake." "It's not a mistake, Christine." I kept my tone level, factual. "The school conducted an audit, at my request. They found the work wasn't hers. It was Jordan Ellis's. She put her name on another man's work and called it her own." The silence on the other end was different this time. Not just shock, but a dawning, horrific comprehension. The pieces, my questions, my distance, the tutor she'd defended, were snapping together into a monstrous picture. "You," she whispered, the fury leaching into disbelief. "You requested this? You did this to your own granddaughter?" "I requested the truth," I corrected. "She did this to herself. I just stopped paying for the lie." Zoe's voice suddenly ripped through the line, close to the phone, stripped of all its polished arrogance, reduced to a wounded, furious child. "You ruined my life. You're a sick, jealous old man. I hate you. I wish you were dead." Then Christine was back, her voice breaking. "She's destroyed, Dad. Do you hear her? Are you happy? You've broken her. Was your pride really worth this?" That word, pride. It was the final misunderstanding. It was never about my pride. It was about my name on a check that bought a counterfeit. It was about Elena's belief in earned knowledge. It was about the very foundation of what I thought we were building. "It wasn't pride, Christine," I said, exhaustion seeping into every word. "It was principle. You asked me to build her a future. I did. She chose to build it out of stolen materials. I couldn't let it stand." "She's a kid. She made a mistake," Christine sobbed. "A kid who called her grandfather trash on the day she collected the final payoff for her fraud," I said, the memory now a cold, hard stone in my chest. "That wasn't a mistake. That was her final report on my value. I believe her. Now she has to live in the world her choices made." I ended the call. I turned the phone off. The silence in my house was total. I could still hear their screams echoing in the quiet. I had wanted justice, consequence. Now I had it. It tasted like salt and ashes. There was no family left, only the aftermath. Autumn came, then a hard, early winter. The silence from Christine and Zoe was absolute and expected. I heard through an old family friend that Zoe had gotten a job. It was vague, deliberately so. A sense of shame had descended over that branch of my life, a silence that spoke volumes. I didn't seek information. I was done with audits. My own life required inspection. I spent my days in the garage, my workshop. The chaos of tools and wood was a solace. Here, things were honest. A saw cut where you guided it. A joint fit or it didn't. There was no subtext, only grain and geometry. I was building a bookshelf. Not for anyone. Just to build. Oak. Solid, simple, unadorned. The process of milling the wood, cutting the dados, the slow glue-ups, it was a meditation. It was the opposite of a wire transfer. It was time and force and care made physically manifest. One brittle Tuesday in January, I needed a specific brass fastener. The local hardware store didn't have it. Reluctantly, I drove to the big box store on the outskirts of town, Target. The fluorescent lights hummed. The aisles were wide, empty deserts. I found the hardware section, staring at rows of plastic and chrome. I was fumbling for my reading glasses when I saw her. Zoe. She was 4 aisles over, in the home goods section. She wore the red polo, the name tag a smudge from this distance. She was stacking ceramic mugs onto a shelf, her movements slow, robotic. The vibrant, performing girl was gone. The haughty graduate was gone. In her place was a young woman whose shoulders were permanently slumped under an invisible weight. Her face, when she turned to grab another box, was pale, devoid of the calculated spark she'd once worn. It was just empty. She looked up, her gaze drifting over the store, and it landed on me. There was no flash of hatred, no tears. Her eyes, which had once rolled with such practiced impatience, just held mine. In them, I saw the hollowed-out shock of someone living in a world that had proven far less malleable than she'd been taught. I saw a dawning, awful understanding of real consequence, and beneath it, a shame so profound it had extinguished her fire completely. I didn't smile. I didn't frown. I simply gave one slow, almost imperceptible nod. An acknowledgement. I see you. You see me. This is the landscape we made. She looked away first, back to the mugs, her hands trembling slightly as she placed the next one on the shelf. I left my basket there. I walked out into the gray winter afternoon, the cold air a slap. I drove home, my knuckles white on the wheel. The image of her, not triumphant in ruin, just broken and ordinary, was more devastating than any scream. Back in my garage, the smell of sawdust and wood glue was a tonic. I walked to the nearly finished oak bookshelf. It was sturdy. It would hold weight for 100 years. I ran my hand over the smooth top. On the middle shelf, I had already placed a sealed, legal-sized envelope. Inside was a cashier's check, equal to 1 year's tuition at the state university, and a single index card with 4 words in my blocky handwriting: for an education. Earn it. I had not sent it. I did not know if I ever would. The offer wasn't about forgiveness, not yet. It was about possibility. A true foundation, if she ever found the courage to lay it herself. Next to the envelope, I finally placed the revoked Somerset diploma, still in its expensive frame, a monument to a fallen idol, a reminder of the cost of lies. I picked up my orbital sander, plugged it in. The hum filled the quiet space. I began to sand the last rough edge of the shelf, the fine white dust coating my arms, my shirt, the floor. This was the work now. Not building bridges for others, but learning to sand my own rough edges, to make something smooth, solid, and true from the flawed timber I had left. The justice was complete. The revenge was ashes in my mouth. All that remained was this quiet, lonely work of reshaping what was left of a life into something that could simply bear its own weight. The sanding hummed. The dust flew, catching in the light from the single garage window. It was not an ending. It was the beginning of a long, slow, and uncertain repair. So now you know the cost, but the ledger isn't closed. I'm Xavier. This channel is for those who believe some fires are meant to cleanse, not just destroy. If you believe that, prove it. Hit subscribe and ring the bell. The next story is about to drop, and it starts the moment we hit 10K subscribers.